And I've been hinting, it's below what you'd expect of a bottom tier intern.
The level of stupid that I just had to receive just wants me to sit down, grovel on my knees and be like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Yamato.
You make a bad poll, you make a bad call, that's on you.
That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro.
You know that moment when somebody's been sliding by, dodging every bullet, and then suddenly, boom, the receipts come crashing down? That's exactly the storm Jason P. Pirate Software is drowning in right now. And trust me, this isn't some regular internet flop. This is a full-on speedrun of self-destruction, and he somehow manages to make it uglier with every single move he pulls. We're talking about a guy who went from being praised as a beloved indie dev to becoming one of the most roasted villains online in record time. And the wild part? He did it all to himself. Because here's the truth about Pirate Software. He didn't just fall off, he got exposed. Exposed for everything. His coding, people are calling it straight up trash. His work ethic, non-existent. His personality, about as appealing as a soggy gym sock stuffed with expired yogurt. This man sold himself as some legendary hacker-turned-genius developer, but in reality, he's about as elite as one of those pity ribbons you get for showing up at a middle school science fair. Let's break down the obvious, his so-called game development expertise. For years, Thor bragged about his 20 years of experience, his time as a government hacker, and his unmatched technical skills. But then you look at his magnum opus, Heartbound, the game he's been cooking for 8 years, and what do you see? A project that looks like something a teenager would whip up just to grab some extra credit. 8 years, man. That's longer than it took Rockstar to make GTA. And somehow Thor's game has less content than a plastic toy from a fast food Happy Meal.
I recommend people actually download these VODs before he takes them down, because honestly, if I was claiming I'm a game developer with 20 years of experience, this would be embarrassing to have online.
When real coding pros started tearing through his work, they didn't just find mistakes, they found code so sloppy it wouldn't even survive a first day intern review. Total embarrassment.
This would never ever be allowed in a production repository. And I've been hinting, it's below what you'd expect of a bottom tier intern.
We're talking about a dude who can't even grasp basic programming concepts, yet has the nerve to lecture the world about game development like he's some guru.
I gave it back his feedback. I was like, that's horrible design.
But that coding train wreck, that was just the appetizer. The real feast of chaos started once people began digging into his so-called work history, especially his time at Blizzard.
When I worked at Blizzard, I did that for Blizzard, 7 years.
Remember how Thor bragged nonstop about landing his second job at Blizzard purely off merit, swearing there was zero nepotism? Well, his ex-coworker and former roommate just dropped a nuclear-level bomb that shatters that whole fairy tale. Turns out Jason wasn't grinding code at Blizzard, he was grinding Reddit memes all day. His coworker, who literally sat right beside him, says she watched him flat out ignore his assignments while scrolling and laughing at posts, and when she tried to report his lazy behavior, nothing happened. Why? Because Daddy had a cushy spot at the company, and no one wanted to be the one to boot the executive's son. Total privilege on display.
It does not look good on your future at Blizzard if you mess with an executive's son. Period. Everybody knows who Jason is. If you write him up, if you fire him for misconduct or otherwise, people are going to know you did it. They're not going to know that anything was actually going on. They're just going to know you were the guy that fired Joey Ray's son, and your career is pretty much toast.
But the roommate situation, that's where it gets downright nasty. This same woman was kind enough to let Thor rent a room from her, and within just 1 week, he managed to wreck her furniture, leave the kitchen looking like a crime scene, and turn his bathroom into what she swears was a full-on biohazard zone. We're talking about mysterious gray gunk smeared on the walls, a shower with no curtain, and a toilet disaster so foul she had to scrub it in gloves like she was handling toxic waste. And when he finally moved out, she says she found what looked like snot, or maybe something even worse, literally wiped across his bedroom walls. Now let's be real, this isn't some clueless college kid trashing his first dorm. This is a grown man, an adult, who apparently never figured out the basics of hygiene, And if that wasn't enough, let's talk about his professionalism. At a charity event meant to raise money for children's hospitals, Thor was reportedly screaming at coworkers for not playing League of Legends at a pro level. A charity event for sick kids, and he turned it into his personal rage tournament.
Video games. There was actually a charity event on campus. It's an Extra Life charity, and we would play games on campus for 24 hours straight. Pirate just happened to participate in this. I was on his team for a league tournament, and he screamed at our team for apparently not gearing correctly to counter the other team because we were just that bad.
This dude was so toxic, even his own teammates refused to game with him again. That's not passion. That's being an unhinged nightmare who can't tell the difference between a fun charity match and the freaking world championship. But believe it or not, it actually gets worse. Because while Thor was busy being the roommate from hell and the co-worker nobody wanted, he was allegedly out here scamming his own audience with crypto schemes. The infamous Twitch hype train controversy? Yeah, it wasn't just about shady donations. It was straight up organized fraud. Thor and one of his mods got caught red-handed staging fake donations to pump up his hype train numbers, complete with phony usernames and scripted OMG messages. His own mod pretended to be a random whale dropping $50,000, and Thor put on this Oscar-worthy act of fake shock like he didn't know what was happening. The whole thing was faker than a WWE storyline. And here's the kicker. The legal fallout could be brutal. We're talking possible federal fraud charges, state consumer protection violations, and Twitch TOS breaches that could slam him with a permanent ban. Thor didn't just scam his fans, he did it in the most obvious, traceable way possible. What makes this whole saga even messier is Thor's total refusal to take accountability for anything. When the Stop Killing Games controversy blew up, he could have just said, "Hey, I misunderstood the initiative," and moved on. Instead, he doubled down, insulted everyone, and even told an entire movement they were stupid and could eat my entire ass. Real classy behavior for a guy who claims to be a serious game developer. And the funniest part, Thor actually brags that being cast as the villain somehow helped the Stop Killing Games movement, like people should thank him for being so hated that it forced others to unite against him. That's not some genius strategy, that's pure cope. But honestly, this is becoming a pattern with him. Whenever experts call out his garbage programming instead of listening or trying to improve, he just sneers and dismisses them as YouTube grifters desperate for relevance. The man is allergic to accountability.
It's another, YouTube grifter trying to fight for relevance, dude. That's all that shit is.
When his ex-coworker exposed his work habits, you'd think Thor would clap back and call her a liar, but he didn't even have the time. The guy was already drowning in too many other scandals to juggle. At this point, he's basically turned deflection into an art form. Every single criticism gets brushed off with excuses, blame shifting, or straight up denial. Nothing is ever his fault. It's always somebody else's problem. His code isn't trash. Reviewers just don't get his genius. He wasn't slacking at Blizzard. He was being creative. The hype train wasn't fake. His mod was just being supportive. And let's not forget, even Dr. K, Twitch's go-to therapist, couldn't break through that wall of denial. That's how deep the delusion runs.
I think sometimes the things that I talk about in regards to those types of things is misconstrued as arrogance or boasting, when in reality, I'm just trying to give context.
So that is the problem right there. So I want you to listen to this phrase. Sure. This gets misconstrued as arrogance, but in reality, it's this. Yeah. That is the most arrogant statement on the planet, bro.
And here's the cruelest irony. Thor's entire downfall is self-inflicted. Nobody twisted his arm to make those trash takes about the Stop Killing Games initiative. Nobody forced him to pump out garbage code for 8 years straight. Nobody told him to scam his own fans with fake hype trains. Every single disaster was his own doing. And when people started calling him out, he didn't learn. He doubled down with arrogance and defensiveness that made everything explode even faster. The numbers tell the whole story. Over 200,000 people have bailed on his YouTube channel. His viewership has cratered by 90%. His Twitch streams, ghost towns. This is the same guy who once bragged about breaking hype train records, and now he's lucky if a few hundred people even show up. That's not cancel culture, that's consequences culture. And the saddest part, watching him cling to that fake authority while the Empire burns down around him. He's still shouting online, still posting nonstop, still pretending to be some big voice in game development, but now it just looks pathetic. Meanwhile, Thor's reputation got so toxic he was forced to step down from his own company just to keep the backlash from wrecking his co-workers' careers. Ludwig and the Off-Brand Games team had no choice but to distance themselves from their own co-founder because simply having him around was poisoning their projects. And here's why that feels so deserved. Thor had every advantage in the book. Nepotism handed him jobs he wasn't qualified for. His dad's position shielded him from getting fired. He had a huge platform, a loyal fan base, and doors open that most developers could only dream of. But instead of building something meaningful, he squandered it all because he couldn't stop being arrogant, lazy, and dishonest. He had the world served to him on a silver platter and he tossed it straight in the trash, all because accountability was apparently too hard. Now, the internet loves a juicy villain origin story, but this one's different. This isn't a guy who got corrupted by fame. This is a guy who was always like this. Fame just gave him a bigger stage to showcase his worst traits, the sloppy work ethic, the hygiene horror stories, and the total inability to handle even the smallest bit of criticism. All of this existed long before Thor ever got internet famous. So no, success didn't change him. It just put a spotlight on flaws that were always there, making them impossible to ignore. This is the deserved downfall of Pirate Software, not because the internet canceled him, but because he finally ran out of places to hide. The coding community exposed his lack of real skill. His former co-workers pulled back the curtain on his non-existent work ethic. Legal experts pointed out the fraud risks circling around him. And through it all, Thor kept proving he learned nothing. Still defensive, still arrogant, still refusing to admit even the smallest fault. At this point, the pirate ship has crashed straight into the rocks. And Jason Hall, he's still gripping the wheel like nothing's wrong. But what do you think? Does Thor even stand a chance at a comeback? Or is this game over for good? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one.